Well, welcome to another Book Talk Tuesday with Tracy. I thought it would be an interesting topic today, rather than to talk specifically about one book, to talk a little bit more in general terms about why I write the kind of novels I do. Of course, I write fiction, romantic suspense, Christian romantic suspense. I also write stage plays and devotional books, but today I'm talking mostly about my fiction and why I include some content that some Christians might feel is a little bit edgy. That's the word that was used at one point. I've heard gritty, I've heard authentic. And I just want to start off by saying it's definitely, in my mind, pretty mild, pretty tame. Has anyone ever watched TV lately? But definitely not graphic by any means. But I guess the thing is, it's sometimes not content that would be in your typical Christian romance. Certainly not in a bonnet romance or, the sweet romance. Because sometimes my characters do things that they shouldn't do. Even characters who aren't Christians. And I know that doesn't necessarily fit into the traditional CBA, the Christian book market, because certainly some publishers, they want your characters to be Christians already to begin with. And certainly they want them to have some kind of conflict and problem, because without that, there isn't a story. But, I just tend to gravitate a little bit more to that more edgy content, or more realistic, I guess, in some ways you might call it. So, for instance, I was interviewed not that long ago on a podcast where we were talking about this very thing, and I mentioned the fact that, well, I guess first of all, I didn't grow up in the church per se. I came to Christ as a young adult, but I wasn't necessarily part of that church culture where there is the sense that almost you have to pretend that everything's perfect, if that makes sense. I've experienced a few things myself as a young person, and certainly even as a Christian. I'm not perfect. My husband and I have been in ministry for years, and that's another thing that we noticed, having grown up differently than a lot of other Christians, as in not growing up in a Christian home per se, or a religious home. We just maybe aren't as shocked by things that other people are. And also we tend to see people just as people. I mean, having been in ministry, like I said, people do some crazy things, even Christian people. And I think there is that, for skeptics, there is a sense that there's a lot of hypocrisy in the church, because the fact of the matter is, even Christians behind closed doors are saying things and doing things that really aren't very Christ-like, if I can put it that way. So for me, it's important to be authentic in that regard. And yes, I have characters who are Christians, and yet their thought processes and the things that they're feeling maybe aren't necessarily squeaky clean. And I've even had reviews on Amazon saying, well, that didn't sound like something a Christian would say. Well, just a minute. Like, they said it to themselves. Are you sure? Have you looked in the mirror lately, kind of thing? And I know we're supposed to be taking every thought captive, but we're also human. Like, Christians are human beings too. The other thought is, I do like to have, often there's a character who comes to Christ. So I'm very interested in that redemptive theme and the whole theme about grace, that God's grace is enough. So I guess that's why I like to include that kind of content in my books. And having just talked about a couple of books in the last few weeks, Conspiracy of Bones and Play It Again, you'll find that kind of content in most of my writing, not just in those two, but in all of it. Like, I've had prostitutes and people struggling with gender issues, and lots of prejudice and racism and promiscuity. And I mean, it's part of life. Not that I'm trying to follow a trend or be trendy or somehow, appeal to a certain segment of the audience or whatever. But for me, I just feel it's real. Like, it's real. And I want to talk about real people with real struggles. And those are the stories that I'm interested in telling. So that's kind of a little bit of the reason why, and that's sort of some background to why I write the way I do. If you've read any of my books and you've enjoyed them, I would sure appreciate a review on Amazon or elsewhere. And I'd love to hear your comments. So visit me at my website, tracykrauss.com, TracyKrauss.com. And let's have a little conversation about it. Until next time, God bless.